Horror didn't start with modern jump scares or CGI monsters. It began with shadows, silence, and stories that crawled deep into our minds. From eerie castles and cursed experiments to haunted houses and demonic forces, these classic horror films shaped everything we fear today. They weren't just movies, they were cinematic nightmares that defined generations. In this video, we'll travel back through time to uncover 10 classic horror masterpieces that continue to terrify audiences decades after their release. Each one changed the genre forever, with unforgettable scenes, haunting performances, and themes that still echo through modern cinema. So, dim the lights, grab your popcorn, and get ready to revisit the origins of true horror. And before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay with us on this dark journey through film history. Number 1. Nosferatu, 1922. When people talk about the origins of horror cinema, Nosferatu stands as the first true nightmare ever captured on film. Directed by F.W. Murnau in 1922, this silent German expressionist masterpiece is an unauthorized adaptation of Dracula that nearly vanished forever after a copyright lawsuit ordered all copies destroyed. Yet the film survived, and in doing so, it preserved the birth of modern horror. What makes Nosferatu so unnerving, even after a century, is its haunting simplicity. Max Schreck's portrayal of Count Orlok is a chilling departure from the seductive vampires of later years. With his bald head, long claws, and skeletal features, he embodies death itself, creeping silently through doorways, climbing staircases with inhuman grace, and freezing audiences in terror. Every shadow in this movie feels alive, every flicker of light hides something sinister. Murnau's use of contrast, silence, and distorted imagery created a language of fear that filmmakers still use today. The eerie landscapes, Gothic castles, and slow, methodical pacing draw the viewer into a trance of dread. Beneath its supernatural story lies a reflection of real-world anxiety, fear of disease, death, and the unknown. More than a film, Nosferatu is a cinematic ghost, a reminder that horror doesn't need sound or gore to unsettle us. It thrives in the quiet moments, in the frozen stare of a monster who feels disturbingly human. 100 years later, Count Orlok still rises from his coffin, and the world still shivers. Number 2. Dracula, 1931. When Bela Lugosi first stepped onto the screen as Dracula, horror cinema changed forever. Directed by Todd Browning, this 1931 classic brought Bram Stoker's vampire to life in a way the world had never seen: elegant, hypnotic, and utterly terrifying. Lugosi's thick accent, piercing gaze, and slow, deliberate movements created the blueprint for every vampire that followed. Unlike modern monsters dripping with blood and chaos, Dracula builds its terror through silence and suggestion. Every creak of a coffin, every pause between words, seems to pull the audience deeper into its spell. Lugosi's Dracula is not a beast. He is charm and menace in perfect balance, a predator who kills with grace. His immortal line, "I never drink wine," became a symbol of seductive evil that audiences still whisper today. The film's Gothic sets and candlelit halls define the atmosphere of early horror. Shadows stretch like living things, and the camera lingers on empty corridors that seem to breathe on their own. Even without music, the film hums with tension, a slow, beautiful decay that seeps into your bones. Beyond the fangs and fear, Dracula explores the darker corners of desire, power, and immortality. It's not just a monster story. It's a reflection of humanity's obsession with eternal life and forbidden pleasure. Nearly a century later, Lugosi's Dracula remains immortal, not because he cannot die, but because cinema refuses to let him fade into the dark. Number 3. Frankenstein, 1931. When James Whale's Frankenstein premiered in 1931, audiences weren't ready for the monster that awaited them. Adapted from Mary Shelley's novel, this film didn't just terrify viewers, it redefined what horror could be. Boris Karloff's portrayal of the creature remains one of cinema's most haunting performances, a blend of tragedy, innocence, and terror that has echoed through film history. Karloff's monster, with his flat head, heavy boots, and pleading eyes, wasn't simply a villain, he was a victim of human ambition. Created from the corpses of others and brought to life by lightning, he represents both the triumph and downfall of science. His creator, Dr. Frankenstein, shouts the now iconic line, "It's alive," a cry of godlike pride that marks the beginning of his own destruction. The movie's brilliance lies in its empathy. Beneath the horror beats a heart full of sorrow. The monster longs for acceptance, yet every hand that reaches for him brings only fear. When he accidentally kills a young girl, it's not malice, it's misunderstanding, and that's what makes it horrifying. The audience feels pity, not just terror. Visually, Frankenstein is a masterpiece of shadows, smoke, and stormlight. Whale's direction gives every scene a Gothic grandeur, towering laboratories, flickering bulbs, and the restless hum of forbidden creation. Almost a century later, Frankenstein endures because it's more than a monster movie. It's a warning, a story about humanity's thirst for power and the fragile line between genius and madness. In the monster's eyes, we see ourselves, lost, lonely, and desperate to be understood. Number 4. The Mummy, 1932. When The Mummy first unwrapped its ancient horrors in 1932, audiences were captivated by something new, a horror that blended love, death, and immortality. Directed by Karl Freund and starring Boris Karloff in another legendary role, this universal classic didn't rely on jump scares or blood. Instead, it chilled viewers with atmosphere, silence, and an otherworldly sense of dread that lingers even today. Karloff's portrayal of Imhotep, the cursed Egyptian priest resurrected after 3,700 years, is a masterclass in restraint and presence. With every slow movement and hollow stare, he radiates ancient sorrow and obsession. Beneath the bandages is a being consumed not by hatred, but by eternal love. His quest isn't for revenge, it's for reunion, to find his lost princess, reincarnated in the modern world. That tragic motivation turns The Mummy into something far deeper than a simple monster movie. Visually, the film is hypnotic. Freund, once cinematographer for Dracula, drenches every frame in shadow and mystique. The sets, filled with hieroglyphs, relics, and tombs, create a world where time itself feels cursed. The haunting makeup, painstakingly applied over hours, gives Karloff an unforgettable, mummified visage that still defines the character today. At its core, The Mummy is about obsession, the cost of clinging to the past, and the price of trying to rewrite destiny. It asks a question that echoes through time. How far would you go to bring back the one you love? Nearly a century later, The Mummy remains both romantic and terrifying, a reminder that the most haunting monsters are the ones driven by love that refuses to die. Number 5. The Invisible Man, 1933. When The Invisible Man hit theaters in 1933, it didn't just terrify audiences, it stunned them with groundbreaking visual effects and a villain unlike any other. Directed by James Whale and based on H.G. Wells' classic novel, the film introduced cinemagoers to Dr. Jack Griffin, a brilliant scientist whose experiment in invisibility turns him into a monster driven by madness. Played by Claude Rains in his Hollywood debut, Griffin is both terrifying and tragic. Even without showing his face for most of the film, Rains' chilling voice and manic laughter make him unforgettable. The way he moves, laughing as he strips off his clothes to vanish into thin air, still sends shivers down the spine. He's not a creature cursed by fate or science gone wrong. He's a man who chooses to embrace chaos once freed from the limits of visibility and morality. The film's special effects, revolutionary for their time, used double exposures and hidden wires to create illusions that left 1930s audiences speechless. Watching objects move by themselves or a cigarette float in midair was a marvel that helped define early Hollywood innovation. Yet beneath the spectacle lies a psychological horror, the loss of identity. Griffin's descent into insanity isn't just about invisibility, it's about power and isolation. When no one can see you, who are you really? What's left of your humanity? Eerie, intelligent, and darkly humorous, The Invisible Man remains a landmark in horror storytelling. It proved that the scariest monsters aren't always the ones we can see, but the ones hiding within. Number 6. Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. Few sequels in cinema history have ever matched, let alone surpassed, their predecessors, but Bride of Frankenstein, 1935, stands as a rare masterpiece that did exactly that. Directed again by James Whale, this follow-up to the 1931 Frankenstein elevated Gothic horror into something poetic, tragic, and deeply human. The story picks up where the first film left off. The monster, portrayed once again by Boris Karloff, survives the burning windmill and wanders through a world that fears and rejects him. Yet in this film, he evolves no longer a grunting beast, but a soul yearning for companionship. When Dr. Frankenstein, Colin Clive, is coerced by the sinister Dr. Pretorius into creating a mate, the stage is set for one of cinema's most haunting moments, the birth of the bride. Elsa Lanchester's brief yet iconic performance as the bride has become legendary. With her lightning-streaked hair and shocked, bird-like movements, she symbolizes both creation and rejection, a living being who never asked to exist, meeting her creator with terror instead of love. Her scream at the sight of the monster shatters his fragile hope and seals their tragic fate. Whale infused the film with dark humor, religious symbolism, and even hints of social satire, making it more than a horror movie. It was art. The stunning sets, expressive lighting, and haunting score by Franz Waxman brought operatic grandeur to the genre. Bride of Frankenstein endures as a story about loneliness, creation, and the monstrous nature of human desire. It reminds us that even monsters seek love and that rejection can be the cruelest horror of all. Number 7. Psycho, 1960. When Alfred Hitchcock released Psycho in 1960, he didn't just create a horror movie, he rewrote the rules of cinema itself. Bold, shocking, and psychologically complex, Psycho became a defining moment in film history and cemented Hitchcock's legacy as the master of suspense. The film begins innocently enough. Marion Crane, Janet Leigh, a secretary on the run after stealing money, stops for the night at the remote Bates Motel. There she meets the soft-spoken but peculiar Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins in a performance that remains one of the greatest in horror history. What follows is one of the most unexpected narrative twists ever put on screen. The infamous shower scene, lasting less than a minute but composed of over 70 cuts, shocked 1960 audiences to their core. Its brutal editing, screeching violins, and quick flashes of violence forever changed how fear could be portrayed. But the real horror isn't the knife, it's Norman himself, a man trapped in a fractured mind, ruled by the terrifying presence of his mother. Hitchcock's use of misdirection, silence, and psychological tension transformed Psycho into more than a slasher film. It was a study of madness and repression. The film broke taboos, from showing a toilet flush on screen to killing off its apparent protagonist halfway through. Bernard Herrmann's chilling score and the stark black-and-white cinematography intensified every moment, turning simple images into unforgettable nightmares. More than 60 years later, Psycho still grips audiences. It's not just the horror of murder that lingers, but the eerie realization that evil can hide behind the most ordinary smile. Number 8. Night of the Living Dead, 1968. When George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead premiered in 1968, it forever changed horror cinema and arguably invented the modern zombie genre. What began as a low-budget black-and-white independent film turned into a cultural milestone that blended raw terror with biting social commentary. The story follows a group of strangers trapped in a farmhouse as the dead begin to rise and feast on the living. Among them is Ben, Dwayne Jones, a calm and resourceful man trying to keep everyone alive while chaos unfolds outside and paranoia builds inside. The simplicity of the setup only amplifies the dread. Nowhere feels safe, and every human decision seems to lead closer to doom. Romero's direction is unflinching. The grainy cinematography and documentary-style realism make the horror feel disturbingly authentic. When the film first screened, audiences were stunned not only by its graphic violence, but also by its bleak tone. There's no savior, no happy ending, only survival, moment by moment. Beyond its scares, Night of the Living Dead was radical for its time. Casting a black actor in the heroic lead role during the height of racial tension in America gave the film a layer of social depth. The shocking, tragic ending, where Ben survives the night only to be mistaken for a ghoul and shot, serves as a devastating commentary on humanity itself. With minimal resources and maximum impact, Romero proved that horror could be both terrifying and thought-provoking. Night of the Living Dead didn't just make zombies iconic, it made them a mirror reflecting society's darkest instincts. Number 9. The Haunting, 1963. Robert Wise's The Haunting, 1963, stands as one of the most psychologically chilling ghost stories ever filmed. Unlike the blood and gore that would dominate later horror, this masterpiece relies on atmosphere, sound, and the power of the unseen to instill pure dread. Based on Shirley Jackson's acclaimed novel The Haunting of Hill House, it remains a benchmark for intelligent, character-driven horror. The film follows Dr. Marquay, Richard Johnson, a paranormal investigator who assembles a small group to study Hill House, a mansion with a sinister reputation. Among them is Eleanor Lance, Julie Harris, a fragile, lonely woman who soon becomes the emotional core of the story. As strange noises echo through the halls and the house itself seems to breathe, Eleanor's grip on reality begins to unravel. What makes The Haunting so terrifying is what it refuses to show. The horror is psychological, doors bend inward, whispers fill the darkness, and shadows seem to watch from unseen corners. Wise used innovative cinematography, deep focus lenses, and chilling sound design to make viewers feel as trapped and paranoid as the characters. Julie Harris delivers a haunting performance, portraying Eleanor's descent into fear and obsession with heartbreaking vulnerability. The audience never knows for sure whether Hill House is truly haunted or if Eleanor's mind has created its own prison, a duality that keeps the film timeless. Without a drop of blood, The Haunting proves that true horror lies not in monsters or gore, but in the terror of the unknown and the darkness lurking inside the human mind. Number 10. The Exorcist, 1973. When The Exorcist premiered in 1973, it wasn't just a horror film, it was a global phenomenon that terrified audiences, broke box office records, and redefined the genre forever. Directed by William Friedkin and based on William Peter Blatty's best-selling novel, the movie told a story so shocking and visceral that people fainted, screamed, and even walked out of theaters. Yet, decades later, it still stands as one of the most powerful depictions of good versus evil ever captured on film. The story centers on Regan McNeil, Linda Blair, a sweet 12-year-old girl who begins exhibiting disturbing behavior that defies medical explanation. Her desperate mother, Ellen Burstyn, turns to two priests, Father Karras, Jason Miller, struggling with his faith, and Father Marin, Max von Sydow, a seasoned exorcist, to save her from what appears to be a demonic possession. What makes The Exorcist terrifying isn't just the supernatural horror, but the raw realism of its execution. Friedkin's unflinching direction and Dick Smith's groundbreaking makeup effects make every moment feel painfully believable. From Regan's head spinning and levitation to the guttural, demonic voice that emerges from her, the film pushes psychological and physical boundaries few dared to cross at the time. Beneath the shock lies a deeply human story about faith, guilt, and redemption. Karras' internal struggle mirrors humanity's own battle with doubt and belief. With its haunting score, cold cinematography, and unforgettable imagery, The Exorcist remains one of the most influential films ever made. It's not just a tale of possession, it's a chilling reminder that evil can wear an innocent face. And there you have it, 10 classic horror films that stood the test of time and continue to inspire fear, fascination, and awe. Each of these movies did more than scare audiences. They defined what horror could be, blending art, psychology, and raw emotion into unforgettable experiences. Which of these timeless nightmares is your favorite? Or is there one you think deserves a spot on the list? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the hidden world of cinema. Until then, keep your lights on and sleep well if you can.